Hello, everyone. So first of all, a quick introduction. My name is Madhur. I'm a product manager at Google. Previous to this, I was working in product teams at Uber, Microsoft, and a startup called Flock. So without much delay, let's quickly jump into today's topic that I want to talk about, the changing role of a PM during a product lifecycle. Over over many years, there have been a lot of definition about what a product manager is supposed to do, what their role entails. You must have heard a lot. I have heard a lot. PM is the CEO of the product. PM is the one who says no. PM is the filler of the gaps. By the way, PM who says no is potentially one of my favorite uh, definitions. Um, the PM is a bridge between user and business. PM is the creative one, the data savvy one, the business focused one, or just the one who keeps everyone focused towards the same goal. One thing is very clear that a PM wears a lot of hats, but something to note is that all these hats are not worn at the same time. And that's the key point. And that's what I want to kind of talk about today and stress upon that. It's very important for a PM to also understand what life cycle stage the product is in to decide which hat to wear, because frankly, you always have options. It's not a very natural process. You always have an option to wear multiple hats. The question is which hat to choose is a choice. And I hope people make the right choice. So instead of boring you with the theoretical presentations, I thought we'll just go through a case. Um, we'll just discuss how a particular product person reacts throughout that case and take you through a journey, and you can figure out what kind of hats they are wearing at what points of time, and also give you a good context of what a typical product management job looks like in a mid or large corporation. So let's assume today's case is for a company called ABC Apartment Corp, a completely hypothetical name. They buy and rent apartments. Before we jump into the product problems and all, let's talk about the org structure, which I think is super interesting. Um, Suppose you have a CPO called Nina. Her target is to make $100 million in next 5 years. So she's got this target from the CPO, CEO, and the company has decided this XYZ we'll do. The product team needs to get us $100 million additional revenue or revenue in the next 5 years. So she divides it into two parts. One, making revenue from existing businesses. So there is Jen, who is the VP of growth, uh, whose job is very simple. Whatever is our biggest source of revenue today, apartment rental and apartment selling, get us 80 million in next 5 years. That's your job. Um, and then there is also Nina is also a very forward thinking CPO. She knows that what makes money today may not make money tomorrow. You need to be ready for disruptions and you need to be always innovating. So she has another VP called Samir. Samir is the VP of new products, and his job or his target is that, hey, get us 20 million from new businesses in the next 5 years. That's a good target to be at. So new businesses will be at somewhere around 20 million in the next 5 years, whereas existing business will be somewhere around 80 million. Again, we'll not get into how Jen decided this, but typically you will see that execs will take some known bets that, hey, this will potentially work out. And there'll be some bets, unknown bets in some sense, like, hey, new businesses we want to explore and take a call on if it works. Then suppose there's a PM in some East team. Of course, there can be more hierarchy, but assuming it's a fairly flat organization called Kate. So today's presentation will be from the eyes of Kate. So assume you are Kate and you report to Samir, and your job is to think about new businesses, new products that you can build. So as Kate, you are thinking about a lot of ideas, you're brainstorming, you're reading industry reports, you're looking at tangential things in a sense like, hey, we only sell apartments, but apartment selling can be a multi-stage process. For example, you do your research, you figure out why you want to buy an apartment. Then you buy an apartment, then you furnish an apartment, and maybe you want to sell an apartment at a later point of time. So what parts of the journey can I be part of? Say you decide like, hey, we could do rentals, for example, furniture rentals, or maybe furnishing itself, he could give you that. or we could do something absolutely tangential. So while you're doing this, you looked at a lot of reports. One of the things that really catches your eye is, or somebody sends you this report, is like, hey, you know what? Homes are sure, apartments are great, but as per the new the market study, it seems that the new generation that is coming up, the younger population actually doesn't prefer apartments. They prefer standalone homes, houses, and they would rather buy houses than apartments if given a choice. And that market is actually growing 30% year on year. And this is a very interesting place to be. And this can be very disruptive to your company as well, in a sense that if it actually becomes really big, then you are selling apartments, whereas people are buying homes. So should you not be investing? So you make a business case. Um, you decide that, hey, this is something that you want to go after. You make a business case. You talk to Samir. You present to a couple of other people as well. Get their thoughts and processes, and to figure out, is this something you want to go for or not? And finally, the decision is made. Like, okay. So Samir says, okay, Kate, go for it. Let's figure out where it is. Let's do a POC and see if it works. So you do your typical user research. So you'll see this kind of a deck in a lot of user research studies where there's a picture of the person who said it, and on the left side or right side, you'll see the actual quote from them. So you do your user research, you rope in your own user researchers, or you do your user research on your own. Typically, ideally, new product managers, even old product managers, please hire or work with good user researchers. They are way better than uh, untrained people, for the lack of better word. So yeah, you do your user research, and something like this comes out where people don't want to buy houses because of trust and blah 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 other reasons. And at the end of the day, you come back with like, hey, these are the three things that really matter to people. Trust. Can I trust the seller and the property? What if there is a legal claim on it? What if somebody else owns it? What if it's not supposed to be an apartment, right? There's a house. There's so many things. Maybe it's an illegal land. Maybe it's a government land. Maybe it's an agricultural land. Second, am I getting a fair price? And third is, it's just too much hassle. See, I can go to an apartment building. A new apartment is being constructed. I can go there. They will show me like 5 or 6 or maybe even 10 types of apartments, east facing, north facing. They will show me any floor, ground floor, top floor, multiple configurations, 1 BHK, 2 BHK, 3 BHK, etc., etc. So they have all those things. So I just need to go there once, and I'll be able to see a lot of samples as well. Whereas house is a house is a house. So that's a problem. Now, you've done that. So if you look at the hats, initially you were being the salesperson. You were saying like, this is a good opportunity. You were selling the idea to your boss, to multiple other people. And you also sold this idea to some of maybe your user researcher, maybe your designer, to come up with some mocks, etc. You are a salesperson in some sense. Then you got into user research. Now you are basically the voice of the user. You're trying to understand exactly what the problem is, forgetting what your business needs at this point of time. You need to first figure out what the problem is before you can decide what to solve and can you solve it. So you decide, now you are prioritizing. You have all the data and say, hey, you know what, the biggest issue we can solve for is today is trust. But how do we solve for trust? How do we make sure people understand that, hey, you can buy this property? So again, a lot of brainstorming happens. You come up with multiple solutions. Maybe you do a random testing with the users, and like, hey, you know what? The best way we can actually showcase trust is if we say we guarantee that the house you're buying is legally clear. So what does that guarantee mean? So in a sense, like, you're putting your own name behind it. This, buy this house, and I'm guaranteeing that there is no problem with the house. What does a guarantee but look like? And now this is another interesting thing, right? What does a guarantee look like? What happens if there is a legal claim? What happened to your guarantee then? Um, what have you done to say that this is guaranteed and all? So you discuss, you debate, you look at some of the customer review, basically what customer's voice you looked at, how they said, what they said, to kind of figure out what are the actual pain points and what kind of guarantee would, why are they afraid, for example, that there will be a problem. One is they will lose their money, or it's too much of a hassle to go work with the government, or they'll have to spend a lot on lawyers, etc., etc. And you come up with the definition of guarantee like, hey, if there is a legal claim on your house, um, our company will actually say, have their own lawyers help you navigate through it. You don't have to pay us a penny. And in the worst case scenario, we actually lose the case, we will refund back the entire, we will take basically the cost. We will give you the cost of the house. It's a ridiculously good guarantee in some sense. By the way, don't do it. I'm just making up stuff at this point of time. So assume you want to make a large dent in the market. So you decide, this is how I will do it. So again, you pitch to multiple people. It seems to be if you are able to pull it off, it seems to be a really good thing to do. So you convince that this is something we can do. So you start building the idea a little bit more, and you start talking to more people, and you go to finance and legal, and they say, please stop. Why? Now, this is what your, say, finance person tells you, or the legal person tells you. Hey, suppose the house is, you sell 100 houses a year. Each house is, say, $1 million. You just put us in a liability of $100 million. $100 million liability is something we cannot as a company take. Our 5-year targets are 100 million. How can we take a liability of 100 million? You're going to bankrupt our company trying to do something that is insane. So sorry, this is not happening. You cannot do this. We'll not allow this to happen. Now, you have a choice. You can decide that, hey, that's fine. Our organization is not the right organization to do it. That's a perfect valid solution. Or you think about creative solutions. Now, remember, you're no longer wearing the hat of a customer. You're no longer the idea generation of like 50 other things. You're kind of focusing on this one tip. You are now the business person. The business is, we can't take this liability. So you looked at, what does liability mean? What kind of claims are done? And suppose you find out that, hey, you know what? Only 1 to 2% or 1% of all houses that are sold in this area actually have any legal claim in the next, say, 5 years. And even in those, there is a very strong pattern. Say, houses which were built on agricultural lands in the past 5 years. Maybe they claim that they converted it, but in reality, probably they did not. Houses in which the owner actually did not leave a proper will. So there are like joint owners, and there's a tussle going on who actually owns the house. Or houses which have been abandoned for 5-6 years. Somebody just claimed that this is their house, or abandoned houses. So those are the kind of things. So you go back to legal and say, like, you know what? This is the data. This is what we have. Only 1% of houses actually have this problem. So even if we were to throw darts, the liability is not 100 million. It's just 1 million. So that's slightly better. But but I hear you. This is not something we should be doing. We should have zero liability, right? Basically, we should have zero cases. That's how you will build trust. So what you'll do is, you will look at all these heuristics and like, I'll not let people who match these heuristics to list their houses at all. We'll have some third-party legal lawyers go through all the records and everything, and anybody who has any of these heuristics is not allowed. Even if they claim that this is perfectly fine, to make sure that we are not taking unnecessary risk, we'll not let them list. And you know what? Let's sweeten the deal more. We can also go ahead and insure every house we buy. So every time we buy a house, we take an insurance, and we also probably limit to, say, 5 years. So we are giving you a guarantee of 5 years. So within 5 years, if there's a claim, we are with you. We'll back you up. Now that's something that's an interesting proposition. So again, now at this point of time, you're trying to be the business person, reducing the liability, making sure that finance and legal also understand like why like the liability is probably not as high as they're expected, convince them, see if the risks make sense, and assume you are able to convince them. So congratulations, Kate. So now what? Now you have the clearances, you go ahead and build the feature, and you're figuring out how the feature should look like. How do you communicate to the user what guarantee, warranty, and other things. So assume a feature is something, I mean, like this. At the end of the day, it's just a tag, a banner on top of a listing of a house, which says this is a legally guaranteed house. And when somebody clicks on legal guarantee, you show them all the details about what legal guarantee is, how you are guaranteeing it, and etc., etc., etc. And you come up with like 5, 6 variations of this particular banner. I've put 2 variations. It could be many, many, many more. And you say like, hey, this is what I'll test with. Maybe you experiment with the word as well. By the way, this I don't exactly remember who said this. There's a concept of this big red button or big bold button. The idea is whenever you want to understand how good the engagement can be, maybe put this huge button which says click here, something like that, so that people don't miss it, and then you just see how many people click it. It's not something that will remain forever, but the idea is it gives you the basically like an upper ceiling of where it could go. Eventually you will make it better and better design so that it doesn't cannibalize on everything else, but it kind of gives you a good matrix. So if a big red button also doesn't work for you, probably there is no market. So yeah, this is your feature. All you want to test out at this point of time is, let's say you've covered the basics of how to get the houses and all, that's all there. You want to test out a very single thing from a user side. Do people click on it? Do people engage with it? And eventually maybe do they go ahead and buy any of these houses? What the conversion looks like. So yeah, you're doing that. But while you're doing this, even Samir comes back, your boss comes back and says, hey, Kate, do you know, like I was reading through your reports and all, there's a lot of other interesting things that we are not looking at. Second homes. There is a huge need for second homes. That's an interesting market to be in. Second homes are also not sold like traditional homes, because second homes will be, say, in suburban areas. Why would you want to buy a second home right next to your primary home, right? There is also a very niche segment within homes, basically houses, is called furnished houses. People want to buy these houses, but they don't want to get into the hassle of actually furnishing. Can we actually come up with some kind of an interesting model where maybe we buy empty houses, we furnish them, and we sell out those furnished houses, take a commission? That's an interesting idea. Or maybe just have a separate section for furnished houses. Then there is something called a timeshare kind of a situation where multiple people are trying to buy a same house. So they buy the same house. Maybe it's like a house on the hills, like a second home, which acts like 2 months, 2 months, or 1 month, 1 month, or maybe they live together in it, like things like joint owners and all. What's your thought? Can we think about those as well? Can we go and do some research on that as well, right? And why don't we add that to the pilot? So of these, so I leave it to you guys. What do you guys think about this? What should Kate do at this point of time? You are Kate. I'll give you a few seconds. Okay, so while a product manager should always be open to new possibilities and thinking about it, many of these alternatives are simply distractions. There is a reason I cut it out like this. These are not bad ideas. Remember, these are great ideas. But if you're always after great ideas, you're always after, you're not executing anything. At this point of time, it's very, very essential for you to kind of focus your energies, even when the distraction is coming from multiple sources. Sometimes your manager will distract you. Unfortunately, that happens. So you know, it's like, you know what? Great idea, but let me first make sure that our team is executing on this. And it is your job to also prevent a lot of these distractions to reach your team. So there will always be distraction. Your job is to focus, 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 and make sure that we deliver on something which was already identified as a huge opportunities. So the point is, you've also looked at many of these, potentially not delve deeper into this, but and you took a call on doing something else. So let's get that done first, and then look at these things. So I would potentially say these are distractions, not really alternatives. So now you're able to get all the distractions out of the picture. You are focusing on one simple thing. And now your job is, how do you generate demand? People, while people come to your site for buying apartments, not many of them, you're not really known for selling houses, right? At this point of time. So how do you generate that demand? One is marketing. Can you do ads? Can you do billboards, maybe social media ads, Google ads, and other places, right? Now, ideally, you should have had this conversation much earlier. Maybe you should have had a budget already allocated to you by your own manager, assuming he controls the purse on this one, or whoever controls the purse on this one. I have done this mistake in my career, and many PMs still do it. Is that, hey, you assume that you made the product, there will be budget. Budgets have to be taken; they are not given. So you have to convince many people. So it's super necessary that many a times you do these things early on. So as a PM, you should be thinking far off in the future and getting that budget. The other thing is, you still have one of the biggest properties that you have is your homepage. People come on your homepage to maybe buy apartments, but maybe also they're trying to buy a home for themselves. It could be a standalone house. One of the reasons maybe people buy houses, apartments, is because there are no good houses available, or they don't know where to buy these houses. And if this, the idea and hypothesis, if you're able to show them a legally guaranteed tag on top of a standalone house, the chances of you being able to sell that house is really high. That's a really, really good property. So like, sure, let's go ahead and put that on our homepage. But before we go there, let's talk about something else. Who owns the homepage at this point of time? You will see that it's part of the existing business. So typically it goes to Jen, right? She's the VP for growth. And Jen has this PM called Daniel. Daniel, a super smart chap. He said, like, he looks at the homepage and see like there is a lack of coherence in the entire homepage. And what he realizes is like, hey, anybody can come up and add anything to the homepage. There's a new builder who's starting a new society. They just talk to the sales team, and sales team tells somebody and they put it on the homepage. And as a result, it's like there is no personalization, there is no context that is there. We just, it's basically everything is like the big red button experiment, where the moment we want something to have grab attention, we just give it the half of the page, it converts. It's not that it's not convert, but we can do much better. So he goes to Jen and is like, hey, this is the problem. It seems that we can do much more, and personalization we can do context, we can look at from where the user is coming from. Maybe we can change the homepage based on the user's location. We can change based on user's source. Say, for example, if they came via a certain ad, or they came via, say, um, uh, Twitter, this is the kind of audience. We can actually do some kind of an audience targeting and etc. So, and for that, somebody needs to take full responsibility for this. So Jen says like, great, Daniel, let's make this your problem. So she said, Daniel, drop everything else. You're the PM owner of the homepage. So it's one of the most lucrative, but also the most, tough jobs. You own the homepage. Everything that is happening, uh, anyone who has to put anything on the homepage will go via you. You need to give me, and I'll set your targets as well. To achieve 80 million, of course, I have to make better conversions. So give me 10% conversions on apartment sales. And you know what? I'll give you a promotion if you're able to achieve this goal. It's an ambitious goal, but if you're up for it, and of course, Daniel is up for it. So Kate goes and talks to Daniel. Hey, Daniel, this is a new build thing that we are working on. There's a huge market that's going to come up. And we believe that in next 10 years, this might be bigger than our apartment sales as well. So this is like amazingly crazy good market. We just want to put a small unit on the home page to test it out. And of course, Daniel's answer is no. Why would Daniel basically change everything? Because see, this is for Daniel, this is exactly the problem he was trying to solve. He wants coherence. So they sell apartments. Why should, first question, why should they even have standalone houses on the homepage? They sell apartments. New businesses and all is fine, but that's not the core business. Second, his target is 10% conversion in apartment sales. His target is not 10% conversions in houses sales, right? There is no goal for him. So what do you do right now? So you have to understand one thing. These things will happen a lot, but you have to assume really good intentions. Daniel is not trying to sabotage you or block you or is being jealous of you. No, Daniel is just doing what Daniel thinks at this point of time is the right thing to do based on the targets that have been set for him. And frankly, he's right. You are a distraction to Daniel. So you have to understand that. So you again brainstorm and Daniel like, hey, what can we do? So Daniel suggests a very interesting thing. He says, what do you want to test? You want to test whether the legally guaranteed tag works or not. Sure, we can't put houses, but we work with apartments. And you know what? We only work with the top guys. So only the top players in the market are there. And it's mostly new units that are being built and sold. And all of them are very trustworthy. Let's do this. For some of the apartments, we'll put a legally guaranteed tag and see if people click on it. And I can assure you that we anyways do our checks before we list them, because we are listing not one, but we are listing like 1,000 apartments, for example, or 100 apartments. So we want to make sure that the builder is a reputed builder only. So we'll take some of the best reputed builders, put a legally guaranteed tag, experiment with it and see what happens. That's a great suggestion. It helps you understand if this tag really works or not. And maybe you can even test out like 5, 6 UIs without actually changing anything for Daniel. So should you do it? I'll leave you a couple of seconds to think about it. Okay, so as before, this is probably a distraction for you. Again, Daniel is not wrong. Remember that. He's coming from a very good place. He's trying to figure out how he can help you without actually affecting his work as well. But to you, you are the owner of this. Now you're the user's voice. You're not trying to see if legally guaranteed works on apartments. You're trying to see if legally guaranteed tag works on selling of houses. You're not trying to see which version, like straight tag or slanted tag or 25-degree, 45-degree. Those are very small and minor things. But the main issue is this value enough for the users? Do they interact with it or not? So you say, thank you, but this is not what I'm testing for. And of course, if you do that, what were you doing for the past so many, like this should be the first thing you should have done, right? But you didn't do this first thing. The reason is this is not what you're testing for. And this is another thing you have to be very cautious about. There will be a lot of things. It look like something that you can learn from, or like a shortcut. Many of these will be good things in the sense that you will see like, hey, I can actually look at the experiment that somebody XYZ in the company did to learn from it. But many times they will not be a apples to apples comparison in some sense. So you need to guard against that this is a distraction. It is giving me the wrong results because it's testing the wrong thing. And that will happen. Frankly, that will happen in organizations. So what do you do now? You have hit a roadblock. Daniel is not going to give up his promotion because you want to test out something. And this is exactly the discussion he had with his manager, that people can put anything that is not coherent with our overall vision and mission of the company. And frankly, what you're doing is not yet coherent with the vision of the mission of the company. It's a new project that you're trying out. So, so basically you escalate. Another, by the way, another good essay that I read, I again forgot who wrote it. You can search online. It was called escalate off early, escalate often. Escalation is not a bad word per se. It's considered bad because of, I don't know, historical context, but it's not a bad word. You just go to some and say, hey, this is where I need your help, and that's where a lot of leadership will come in. Leaders in a lot of product leaders, as you grow in your career, more and more of your job would become clearing the path. So this is a perfect job for Sami to clear up the path. So he'll have his let's sync up meeting with Jen. They are mature leaders. They understand that hey, it's always a give and take. They have to also kind of adjust. Jen has to give up some space, for example, if she feels that this is a good product or something that can help the company in the longer run. She has to figure out a way that Kate can do this experiment. So Sami talks to Jen, convinces that this is something that is interesting. They both come on the same page, and Jen says, "Yeah, interesting. I'll figure out what to do." So changes the targets for Daniel. Daniel, great job till now. I'll first of all pat on the back for not distracting yourself and letting that come to me. That's okay. Many times it's fine to let it escalate, right? But I think this is important. Let's do that. Let's change your target. So 8% instead of 10, do 8% only. And let's do, I'll add another OKR, successful pilot for houses. And now suddenly Daniel is your best friend because now you both have a shared OKR in some sense, a shared goal, a shared mission um, to have a successful pilot of houses. So you work with Daniel to put it on the homepage. You work with marketing team to do some ads, and now it's the time for the results. So you do bunch of stuff like A, B, C, D experiments and all. Unfortunately, nothing works. There is there is fairly little engagement, and even when there is engagement, people are not really buying houses. So what happened? Um, you are doing your research, you talk to the customers, hey, what's happening, are we not reaching the right users? Daniel goes to the extent of even giving you space on top of the homepage, for example, just as a small experiment to see if that affects it. Your big bold red button experiment is not working. So what's going on? So you do all these things and you go back to maybe your previous thing and like there were three key points: trust, pricing, too much hassle. You solve for potentially trust, but pricing is still an issue, and too much hassle is also an issue. So what do? You could solve all three. You can go after pricing and say like, hey, you know what? I'll build a model. I'll collect data of all the houses that are sold in that area, build a model of how much this house should cost. Great. And I will also can solve hassle. For example, when you sell apartments, you actually have professionals go and create these 3D guided tours of this apartment so that people can sit at their homes and see the apartments without actually having to come there. So they come there much more mentally prepared. So you can potentially do a similar thing with houses. But the question is, what should you do? How should you proceed? Think about it for a few seconds and then. Okay, so assume you thought about it a lot, and while you can do multiple things, frankly, uh, but let me put some, like, you discover that pricing is fine, but one, it won't be accurate. It doesn't seem like it's a very unorganized market, and it's a fairly complex job to actually do it. Second is when you build these 3D guided tours, etc., which really help you sell apartments, you make one tour and you sell, say, 50 apartments. But here it's a 1:1 comparison. So the cost is really, really high. The chances of actually you recovering that cost by selling that house or whatever commission is maybe no, none. Like there's no chance, or it's almost abysmally low. So while you can go after these, there's one big choice that you can actually make, which we, like some people call, killing your baby. You can go and suppose that's what Kate does. Kate goes to Samir and say like, Samir, we tried these things. It doesn't seem that it is working out. To make it work, there is a chance that we can try these more things. But based on my current understanding and analysis, these are way too expensive, or uh, we are not yet ready for it. So I would potentially propose killing this project. Uh, a lot of people would be unhappy with you, by the way. And this is a kind of a conundrum for a lot of product managers. You have to hold both the optimism and pessimism together in your mind. You need to be this eternal optimistic, which is selling the idea. You sold the idea to the dev team, to the design team, to the research team and marketing team. Hey, you even escalated on Daniel, who was very near to his promotion. And you were selling this idea that this could be bigger than the main core business in in a few years. This is the next big thing. And then you're also holding the idea in your head that perhaps the market is not there. Maybe the reports are wrong, or maybe it's just a bunch of so many mini markets that it doesn't make sense. It's way too unorganized. Or market is there, your company is not the right company to crack it. You don't possess the skill sets or maybe the deep pockets that are necessary to do it. And it's always better that when such a situation arises, you are the one who goes and tells your boss that it's time to shut down, rather than your boss coming to you like, you know what, I gave you this runway, you tried it out, great job, but I don't think we have more money, or we don't want to invest in this any further. We want users, our people, to work on something which has much bigger chances of success. This is done. uh, a lot of people will be unhappy with you, as I said, and frankly, it's never a good feeling. You may also be very unhappy. Let me say, you will be unhappy if this happens, but it's okay. It's part of the learning. But I'll leave you with the last slide, which says, but who said PMs need to be happy? So yeah, that's pretty much it. As you could see, the PM in this situation, Kate, went through a multiple parts, like wore multiple hats at different points. She prevented against distractions. She was a salesperson, a marketing person, a data person, experimentation, user's voice, business voice, legal, finance as well. And eventually she was also the one who was thinking about strategy and saying, like, you know what, this doesn't make sense for us to do anymore. So I hope this helps, and thank you so much for making it this far, and all the best.